And welcome to another episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks. Really looking forward to this week. We have Vettori versus Kevin Holland in the main event, but make sure you check out some of the content at fightnightpicks.com. We get the full card betting guide from our own Joshua Hart. Have a look and see what he's feeling for this weekend. Maybe his best bets are Jack Shore, Ignacio Bahamundus, and Julian Marquez. You're going to have to check out the rest for his big parlay on the weekend. You also have to check out the store. We got some great Fight Night Picks merch over there. I'm going to head into my cart. I'm going to add in one of those Under Armour caps. Great stuff there. Maybe I want a baseball jersey to complete the look. So we're going to add in, I don't know, let's say a medium. Head on into that cart and boom goes the dynamite. Some great stuff over there at fightnightpicks.com. Make sure you check out the shop so you can wear what the Fight Night Picks boys are wearing. Without further ado, let's get into it. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minkah Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clelin Ferrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Boom, and just like that, Matt, we are live as always. One half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me, as always, Matt Allen. You can find him on the respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. Matt, all of those words are just rolling off the tongue. It's early in the morning. It's 10:32 local here. I've got the Red Bull. I'm looking forward to this card. And Matt, it's always fun doing these shows, but I'm really looking forward to this one. I want to see the participation over in the chat. We got Sean V. We got Stanza Betts. Todd's hanging out. He's here week after week. Akash Deep hanging out from the West Coast. It is very early for you. Good to see ya. Ben's here. You're going to Sasha Palatnikov and Mitch Jacob talking about the BJJ. And Christopher Cruz here as well. Matt, love the card. There's 13 fights. Unfortunate that we had Hizriev and Dawkins off of this one. It's also unfortunate that Norma Dumont decided to come in with a thickness again at 139.5. And you definitely have to understand the commission's decision to not let that fight happen because Aaron Blanchfield, of course, coming in on short notice, up a weight class. And by all accounts, it was just going to be a one-off for her at 35. So otherwise, still love the card.
Yeah, it should be a really good card. A lot of weird crossroads fights on this card, too. We've got Jim Miller on this card. Mike Perry, and you never thought you'd see him in a crossroads fight, but he is 7-7 in the UFC, so a lot of interesting matchups on today's card. And I'm excited. We don't normally get day fights. Switching it up a little bit, this should be fun.
Day fights. So, as always, with Fight Night Picks, Kicks, we're going to talk about our two picks for Fight of the Night. I've seen a lot of them over there in the comments section already. A lot of people are thinking that co-main event, I love the fight. We were talking, pre-show. That's probably like the honorable mention of honorable mentions.
I would say.
We'll go with the two that we have, Matt, and we'll flip it back over to our screen from earlier on in the week. We have Mike Perry and Daniel Rodriguez. Love that Mike Perry came on weight. He looked focused. He looks fit. He looks ready. Coming out of MMA Masters for this camp, taking on Syndicate MMA and the BMF Ranch's own Daniel Rodriguez. I didn't get a chance to see who was in his corner this week, but I anticipate probably going to have John Wood in his corner, maybe.
I believe so. I'm actually not sure myself. Probably should have looked that up. But this is a really fun fight, and I don't think this is going to be some tactical masterclass. We're not going to be leaving this talking about how polish the technique of Daniel Rodriguez is this should be a fun fight. You have two guys who have a lot of power in their hands, very durable chins too. Both guys can take a shot, and both guys have decent cardio too. And to top it all off, neither guy has great striking defense, so we should end up with an absolute classic brawl in this fight.
Connor Murray saying, why is the show so late? Connor, it's 10:34 in the morning, and the fight started at 12:30 here, so it's not that late. But yeah, I'll let you off scot-free. You had Clay saying that Mike Perry looks like Alexander Hernandez now. I think he still has more wins than he has losses in the UFC, Hernandez does. But it's close for him, too. It's a little chintzy there. Ty Holmes hitting us up in the super chat saying, parlay, please. Ty, keep tuning in. I got a question mark kicks parlay for this week. I appreciate the super chat nonetheless, but I will get to that as we move along. And Matt, let's go into our next pick for possible fight of the night. Yikes, I can't click on it. Hunter Azure, Jack Shore. I love this fight. Scramble fest to the highest degree. And you've got Azure, who has that wrestling ability in his back pocket. Jack Shore, who hasn't tasted defeat in MMA. Sometimes that's a scary thing for a lot of guys. Coming into a fight like this, it definitely is an odd position because for Azure, he's position over submission. He can throw some ground and pound. He can really kind of work it with the stand-up. He tends to get a little tired as the fights go on. And for Jack Shore, bit of a powerhouse, and this guy sinks up the rear naked chokes.
I'm really interested to see how Hunter Azure decides to fight this fight, because I would say he has the better striking out of these two, but the issue is he definitely has the worst cardio out of these two fighters. So let's say he is really dedicated to the takedown or to the striking early on. He might end up getting tired, and then of course Jack Shore, we all know how good his grappling game is. I think this will be an interesting fight, and this is one of those kind of crossroads fights. No Hunter Azure, it's not like he's been around for the longest time ever, but he is definitely the more recognizable of these two guys, at least right now, or at least the more entrenched in the division, whereas Jack Shore, I think we're both really excited for his future and what his ceiling is in this division. This should be a very fun fight.
I mean, listen, Hunter Azure already kind of sniped the hype train of one Brad Katona, so we'll see what happens coming into this one. But overall, all kinds of great fights. If you're new to Fight Night Picks Kicks, again, appreciate you. Toss the like. We got 144 tuning in. I don't expect this show to go nuts in terms of numbers, if we're totally being honest with each other. Akish Deep, you know it. You're really, really early out west. Some people are really late over on the other coast and the other shores, so we'll see what happens. But overall, appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we'll go from bottom to top. I've got the question mark kicks parlay that I'll sprinkle into there. It's a bit of a prelim banger for me. That's what I'm looking forward to. Maybe not the craziest odds, but if you also want to check out some of the betting info, you can check out Joshua Hart's full card betting guide over on the site, fightnightpicks.com. So, Matt, let's start it off with our first fight. We have Impa Kasanganay taking on Sasha Palatnikov. And I went through late last night, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to fiddle around. I'm going to change all the weights and make them current because for Impa Kasanganay, he's never fought at welterweight. He's always been a middleweight. I believe he had one fight at light heavyweight his entire career. He's coming in here off that highlight reel knockout loss. And for Sasha Palatnikov, I see a lot of people are really, really high on him coming into this fight. I have my reservations. The other thing I want to say before I hand it over to you is the fact that there were a couple of people in the comments section, I think Garrett Murray was one of them, saying, boys, I've been a fan forever, but your pick here totally baffles me because you set it up as a great way for Palatnikov to win. You really attacked the fact that Impa Kasanganay switched gyms. He's cutting weight for the first time here. Third round, who knows? He doesn't throw a lot of kicks, and Palatnikov's susceptible to the kicks. But you pick Kasanganay. So really, if you can kind of attack that from a couple of different angles, what's the reasoning here?
It's because Sasha Palatnikov has a bit of a loaded record, and his only win in the UFC was over Luis Kosei, who almost finished him in the first round and didn't have any cardio. That's what my big issue is. We have two fighters, and I'll just let the cat out of the bag. I don't think Impa Kasanganay will be a top 15 fighter, and I don't think Sasha Palatnikov will be either. And it's nothing against either guy, it's just at 170, the top 15 is just as deep as any other division, if not deeper, so it's really hard to get into the rankings. And you look at what Impa Kasanganay does well. He is quite well-rounded, but he's good at making his opponent not do anything. And there's not a lot of fighters in that category. Rory Mcdonald was a fighter who's just really good at making his opponent guess. And for Impa Kasanganay, yes, his kicking output might not be where I'd like it to be, but in fights where he does throw kicks, he tends to succeed. And for Palatnikov, he doesn't deal well with pressure. We saw that in the Kosei fight. He walks backwards a lot and he can eat shots, because what I don't like about Palatnikov is he doesn't go backwards on an angle when he tries to get out of striking. He just goes straight back. And for a guy with a very credited kickboxing background like Palatnikov, you would expect him to have some of those defensive holes kind kind of fixed by now, but he does like to move straight backwards, and that's how Kosei was able to land on him, because he was just landing those big, awkward hooks. But if you keep on moving forward and your opponent keeps moving backwards, you're going to land eventually. Am I going to say Kasanganay is going to drop Palatnikov and we're going to get another crazy fight like Palatnikov-Kosei? No, not at all. But I do think Impa Kasanganay is the much bigger fighter out of these two. He has the wrestling if he needs to go towards it, and his striking is good enough to at least get the job done to go into the clinch. For Kasanganay, it's not like he has a lot of finishes. He's going to show up to this fight, and he looks like the 170-pound version of Paulo Costa. The guy's got some muscles, but I wouldn't go out there looking for a Kasanganay first-round knockout. I just think he's good enough to make Palatnikov not throw back at him.
Matt, Mitch hitting us up in the super chat. We also had a super chat from the man himself, JP30, so we really appreciate you over there for supporting the channel. Now, this is the thing that I really want to go back and forth in the comments section because, you know, Prince Vegeta-san saying Sasha was a champion. He was in another organization. And then you really kind of think about it. Laos Nan also has Palatnikov to win. I can definitely see it for sure. I mean, Sasha Palatnikov, very tough and durable. The only time he's been, like, finished was that fight against, a good fighter, Munir Lazez.
Exactly.
So I look at this one where, again, I worry about the weight cut for Kasanganay, and for Palatnikov, there's a lot of different holes in his game. Sure, he's tough. Sure, he can strike well. He knows, and this is one of those things, like, you feel stupid for saying it. You rarely see somebody who has really good timing on spinning attacks. Sasha Palatnikov is one of those guys that does. But in a fight like this, I don't have a ton of confidence in one guy either way or another, so it's not going to make a card for me. Before I hand it back over, 73% of fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram have Kasanganay to get the win. That's 316 votes for Kasanganay to 117 for Palatnikov. So, the fans over on the Instagrams, they have Mr. Kasanganay to get the win. The gamblers, Impa Kasanganay is about a -300 favorite right now. He's a pretty big favorite. The fans have him to win. There's a lot of people over in the comment section that have Palatnikov to win. What's the final take?
Okay, so the reason that we made the prediction video the way we did, I think Kasanganay is going to win. I don't think he deserves to be a -360 favorite. That really is the key from that. I'm going to pick Impa. I think he will look good in his 170-pound debut. I think hopefully some of the attributes he had at 185 won't be diminished as much by the weight cut. I don't think he looked terrible yesterday. Maybe there was some footage out there that I didn't see of him, but I thought he looked pretty good in the weight cut, so I am going to stick with Kasanganay.
RJ Parent. No, we didn't do the QMK parlay yet. Todd gets it. No parlay till the end. It'll be somewhere in the prelims, though. I've got two picks. They amount to a -115, so it's not that bad. Pretty decent odds, really. Matt, the Mick is hanging out, and yeah, for this one, I'm in agreement here. I like I said, I have a tough time with it. There's some fights on this card, like it's just really tough to get a read, like Yorgan to Castro and Jarjis Danho, but all said and done, yeah, I've got Kasanganay as well. So we'll move on to our next fight, Matt. We have Darwin Jung taking on William Knight. And I have to be 100% honest. I'm still surprised that William Knight's an underdog in this fight.
So am I.
I get it. Darwin Jung, last time out, he really didn't do well in the first 2 rounds against Sam Alvey. He won the 3rd round, and then it ended up a draw. And Sam Alvey's lost 4 straight coming into that one, but he had the fight against Ryan Spann that was close. Why do I say all of this? Well, because Sam Alvey has a fight coming up, so keep that in mind at the end of this card. But you have William Knight coming into this one, and he's 9-1. The one loss is a knockout to Tafon Chukwe. And we saw that in that CFFC fight where both guys are trading, going back and forth. Chukwe lands a nice one. Knight kind of ducks down, and then bam, bam, Chukwe gets the win. He's a hell of a fighter. He was the type of guy that at, 2-0, 3-0, you really didn't know what you had. But for him to get a win over Knight like that, and for him to get the win against Jamie Pickett in his UFC debut, you know how good Chukwe is. For William Knight coming in on 2 weeks' notice, you always worry about the cardio, the conditioning, which is all he posts about on Instagram. He came into that fight against Alexa Kammer and wrecked house. His wrestling was good, his striking was good, his positioning was good, and even when he got on bottom, he just kind of Derek Lewis his way out of it and just kind of threw Kammer out. I like the cardio on that one. Now, with Darwin Jung, I love the jab, double up, triple up, You never see that in MMA. You see it more in boxing. He has good footwork. He has good takedown defense. That's what makes this fight a great matchup. So I'm really excited to see this one. I mean, over in the comments section, it seems like people are kind of going here, there, and everywhere. Stands a bet saying Jung's head movement leaves much to be desired. And Todd saying Jung's got this one. Matt, what are you thinking?
So I can openly admit, we watch a lot of fights here at Fight Night Picks. I forget some fights happen. And you're just, you get caught up in it. There's a lot of MMA. It's like Neil Magny, Michael Chiesa. Not to single you out, but that had caught you up the other week. I get mixed up on fights. I forgot the William Knight, Alexa Kammer fight. And I think really highly of Alexa Kammer. I might be be one of the few who still does think he's one of the better prospects in this division, but I don't think he got all of his shine taken away by William Knight in that fight. I just think William Knight looked really good against Camar, and I like that he showed a lot of different wrinkles from his game. You mentioned the wrestling was good. I thought his cardio looked really good for where I expected it to be. I'm not saying William Knight's like a Kamaru Usman cardio king. He's going to go out there and be able to withstand people for five-minute rounds, but against Jung, I do think his cardio will hold up, and for Jung, he looked awful against Sam Alvey. I understand he came back a little bit in the third round, but if you're getting landed on consistently by Sam Alvey on the feet, who really is an awkward striker on the feet, I understand he's a tricky southpaw. He has okay power. He throws decent straight shots, but if those are landing on you consistently, William Knight really only needs one to put you out. And for Jung, I like his forward movement to a degree. I don't like the fact that he can get hit as he walks forward, and the fact that he could be walking into a big shot from William Knight makes me side with Knight in this fight.
JD, I like Knight because he wears a crown in his Sherdog pick. Hey, I mean, that's something good. Let's have a look at the odds on this one. Dun Jung minus 135 or thereabouts. William Knight coming back at a plus 115, plus 120. Again, I said, like, I'm still halfway surprised. At Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 67% William Knight to 33% with Da Un Jung. You can find us there. At Fight Night Picks. It's that simple. We throw the picks out there in the Instagram story. You can vote on them. We talk about them in the show. It's fun stuff. But yeah, I look at this one. I mean, for me, Matt, William Knight with the pressure. It'll be interesting to see how Da Un Jung's defensive wrestling holds up against Knight. I think that's the real key to victory. If Jung can really defend the first few takedowns, I think he can kind of bring his boxing together on the feet, maybe tire out William Knight and get a win. This is another one, really tight. And as far as the odds are concerned, if you like Jung, 100%. Good to go, but yeah, for me, I still like William Knight in this one.
I like Knight ever so slightly. Again, I'm kind of surprised where the odds are at.
All right, Matt, we'll move into our next fight. We have Luis Saldana taking on Jordan Griffin. And for some of these ones, and there's really two of them, I switched the pictures. I hate using the black and white pictures, but for Luis Saldana, it was just hard to find a really good one. So now we have the picture of the man himself making his UFC debut in his Venom kit. And don't get me started on the Venom kits. Look at them. They look just like the Reebok kit. How crazy is that? Kept the Reebok kit for Jordan Griffin. Now again, for Jordan Griffin, he's taken on the much higher level of competition. And he's lost to a lot of those guys. He had a relatively close fight his last time out when he took on Yusuf Zalal, and that was kind of like a short notice thrown together booking. But from Jordan Griffin, you know exactly what you're going to get. And you talked about it. You know, is he a good striker? Well, he can be, but sometimes he isn't. Is he a good grappler? 100% he's a good grappler. And usually he has to use a lot of defensive submissions or he's on his back, but he's always active when he's on his back. I think that makes it interesting. For Luis Saldana, all of his wins are by finish. He has plenty of submissions, plenty of knockouts. And the last time out, he was investing in those front kicks and body kicks. And then he front kicked poor Gomez, who looked like small George Costanza, and he finished him. And he looked amazing. For Luis Saldana, riding the wave. I mean, he started his MMA career 10 years ago, and he's only 30. Like, it's insane how many fights he's had. I love the fight. This is a really good one that's going to fly way under the radar. It's a great booking. What are you thinking?
So for Jordan Griffin, every time I think he's going to win, he loses. Every time I think he's going to lose, he wins. Now, he has fought the better level of competition. You mentioned some of the names. He fought Dan Ige. He's fought... who is he in there with? Goodness, I just completely forgot. Brain fart. But Jordan Griffin has fought the better fighters out of these two, without a doubt. Now, the problem with Jordan Griffin, and you bring it up, his activity off of his back, I don't like the activity off of his back, because he is starting to get... Yeah, of course, he lost his law in his last one. I don't like the activity off of his back because he doesn't ever get those submissions. All of his submissions, for the most part, are from those defensive submissions. It's from the initial shot of the takedown. That's when he can grab the guillotine. When he is on his back, he does like to threaten with a lot of submissions. He rarely gets them, though, and that is the one thing about Jordan Griffin's game that I don't really like. He'll try to be active. He throws up a lot of things from his back, but sometimes if you throw up a triangle and your opponent is able to basically push your legs further ahead than you want them, they can easily stack you and get into side control. Just little positions like that do worry me for Jordan Griffin. I'm not saying Saldana is going to be the one who can take advantage of it. And for Luis Saldana, most of his submissions too are by, I'm going to drop my opponent, then I'm going to get on top of them and submit them. And a lot of his submissions are against lesser levels of competition. That is something that happens a lot. You have a guy who's fighting a lot of like 1-0s, 0-1s. You're like, hey, isn't he a striker? Well, yeah, he drops his opponent and then chokes them out because they're not very good. I think this is a really fun fight. And for Jordan Griffin, you know his back's up against the wall. It hasn't really gone his way. He only has one win in the UFC so far, and hopefully maybe not hopefully, but this fight stylistically will play into what Jordan Griffin does really well, but it's also the flip side for Saldana. If he can keep this fight on the feet, where I don't even think Jordan Griffin's bad at, to be completely honest, I think he will be able to pick Griffin apart as the fight goes on. But for Griffin, he's got those weird kind of veteran things that he can always go to, and right when you think he is going to lose a fight, he can normally switch something around and get it back in his favor.
Two really good gyms coming into this one. For Luis Saldana, coming out of Fight Ready MMA. For Jordan Griffin, he's been a Rufus Sport guy for a long time, so you gotta love the pedigrees there. Zachary's saying fight doesn't go the distance in this one. I don't know. I have a hard time with Zachary, and a lot of talk about maybe Jordan Griffin has the tools that Tim Elliott does. I don't know if he has the scrambling and wrestling abilities offensively, but we'll see what happens out of that one. In this fight, I'm sticking with Jordan Griffin. We talked about it before. You have those gritty fights against the Dan Moretz, the Juan Archuletas of the world, and so on and so forth. I love that coming into this one, and I think this is going to be one for Jordan Griffin to kind of remind everybody that, listen, there's an upper level to this division, there's a mid-tier, and then there's good guys at the bottom, and maybe I'm just one of those good guys.
I think Saldana's going to be able to get the win. I do. It's nothing against Jordan Griffin. It's just I haven't seen him go out there. It's not that Jordan Griffin doesn't win fights. He doesn't actively try to win the fight. It just seems like things go against him until he does catch the submission a lot of times. And against Saldana, let's say he isn't able to get that takedown, which I think he will get a takedown at some point in this fight. I do think we will see some scrambling on the bottom, but for the majority of the fight, if it is contested on the feet, I don't like the fact that Griffin can get a little reckless when he tries to close distance. We talk about some guys who are good at striking their way into distance. Griffin sometimes can just sort of lunge his way in there and get caught with shots. Not saying he's going to get knocked out by an elbow, but you got to watch out for that. I'm going to stick with Saldana.
All right, Alex YT saying you guys love underdogs. Not often, but sometimes. I mean, I've already had two of them, so there is that. We'll move into our next fight, Matt. We have Jack Shore. Great interview with Jack Shore on the channel, talking with our own JHK MMA. And a lot of people tuned in for that one, so that really makes me feel good about having a lot more interviews on the channel. There's stuff with him. There's stuff with Colby Northcutt Daniels as well, and you'll be seeing more interviews. Tony Gravely just dropped yesterday. He's got a big fight next week. We also have one locked in the chamber, and I'll give it away. Kai Kamaka III. And if you want to see an exciting fighter, Kai Kamaka brings it every time. But in this one, Matt, we have the guy himself, Hunter Azure, taking on Jack Shore. We consider this one of our two possible fight of the nights. You have the scrambling abilities from both guys. You have the jiu-jitsu of Jack Shore. You have the wrestling of Hunter Azure, the power punching of Hunter Azure, the not so crisp striking of Jack Shore to get into a clinch to take a guy down. That's pretty much what it is. So there's definitely an opportunity for Hunter Azure in this fight. And if you have a look at the odds, I mean, listen, Jack Shore, pretty big favorite coming into this one. He's about a minus 180, 185, with Azure coming back a plus 40, all the way up to a plus 150. I love the matchup. I think it should be a good one. What are you thinking here?
Okay, I feel like we should have a big, Adolfo Vieira red flag over this fight, just because there is the possibility. Now, I like Jack Shore a lot, and I think he's going to be a top 10 in the UFC for a long time. He's my new Jonathan Martinez, but similar to what happened to the old Jonathan Martinez, you can always get knocked out. And I can very openly say this is one of those fights for Jack Shore that it could go very bad very quick.
Matt, moving over into the comments, I just want to get back to it. Olden Turnbull, you're really looking forward to the prelims, and they're really close, and everybody kind of talking about the underdog thing back and forth. Guys back with the best comment of the day. Funny that someone says you love underdogs last week, because last week apparently all we do is pick favorites. You can never win here on YouTube, guys. We just try to do our best. And another great one in there. Let's see. SP Market 100. These two watch fights. It's a new world out there. Yeah, we watch so many fights. But with this one, you can go back, and really for Hunter Azure, it's been the same thing for just about all of his UFC fights, except for the loss against Brian Kelleher, where he was a striker.
Didn't look good.
And for Jack Shore, it's pretty much been the same thing all the way up. He still uses what got him to the dance. Hopefully, he doesn't go away from it.
But here's the thing. He's going to have to go away from it eventually, because 135 has these three fighters. Cody Stamen, Jimmy Rivera, and I guess those are really the only two that matter. And Ricky Simone, if you want to throw a third in there. All they do is wrestle, and they force jiu-jitsu guys to become strikers, and they force strikers to become jiu-jitsu guys. I'm just saying, in the future, watch out for Jack Shore. I like him a lot in this fight, and we do talk about the scrambles. I think when Jack Shore gets top position, he's going to be able to hold Hunter Azure down. That's the one difference between these two fighters. Azure is really heavy on top, and he's a great He's a great example of what a good top control wrestler can do in MMA, but I don't think he's going to be able to sweep Jack Shore if Shore is able to get that same position on him. Whereas if Shore is on his back, I do still feel comfortable enough with him in the grappling that he can go for half guard sweeps. He can try to sweep off his back to then get into a good position for himself, and it will make him avoid going for the takedowns, because let's say Shore's the one going for a lot of takedowns. Azure might be able to make him tired by doing that, and I would still say Azure has the better striking out of these two, even though I don't want Azure to go in there and strike with Sean O'Malley his next fight out. So I'm going to pick Jack Shore, but I can very much see a world where he gets very tired in the first 2 rounds and gets outstruck in the third.
All right, Matt, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Azure, I just can't trust the cardio. We talked about the odds. Let's have a look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram. This one's not close. 77% of fans have Jack Shore to get the win over Hunter Azure. And yeah, the question is, yeah, you got WrestleMania tonight. This is going to be on ABC, so you get a big audience. That's why it's early. And it starts at, 11:30 Eastern is when the prelims start. And then it goes on from there. So you get a good afternoon of MMA. And I saw the press conference starts at, 6 p.m. Eastern. So it's done early. No, please. How do I become an MMA analyst like you guys? If you want the full story, I've given it. Apparently, people want to see the VH1 behind the music of Fight Night Picks. I already have a plan for that one. But all you have to do, watch a ton of tape, start talking into a microphone, start a channel, and then boom goes the dynamite. And that's pretty much all there is to it. That's as simple as it is. Again, a lot of people in this one have Shore. I have Shore as well. Let's move on, Matt, to our next one. We have a fight that if you feel confident in this fight, you must know one of these guys personally. Or give your head a shake. Because for Jarjis Danho, hasn't fought in years and years and years. Matt, you talked about it before. I won't steal it.
His layoff's longer than his career. If that happened to any other professional athlete, no one would think that they belong in the same league that they were originally a member of.
Bub Collins hitting up the super chat. I know we don't do any locks, but what do you think? Appreciate you fellas. Have a great night. Bub, I'll give you the question mark kicks parlay. I hope that helps. But yeah, in this one, how the hell do you feel confident Yorgan to Castro? Like, again, I can think back to his fight with NEF for the Cruiserweight title where he knocked out Ross Hilton. Good win, but going into that, I looked up Yorgan's record, and I thought, this guy has a losing amateur record, and he's knocking out scrubs on his way up. Okay, cool. And then he lands a super overhand right in an 18-foot cage and knocks out 6'5" Ross Hilton. What did I learn? Well, he's a good striker, and he's got a powerful right hand, but I didn't really learn a lot. And that's the thing. You've seen these short fights from Yorgan to Castro. Likewise, for Jarjis Danho, when he fights Daniel Malanchuk, he just swings, hammers at him. And then he tries to take him down, and he can't. And then that's pretty much the fight. At the end, there's an illegal shot to the old cup. They end it. They go to a technical decision in the 3rd round. Then he fights Christian Colombo. It was an awful fight. And Colombo lost a point in the 1st round. It ends up as a draw. So you have a fight here. I have no confidence in either guy either way. I'm going with the fresher guy in Yorgan to Castro, and that's all I can offer you.
I'm going to pick De Castro, but I have very little to say on this fight. You have two guys who, it's nothing against Yorgan de Castro. I don't see him being in the UFC forever. I just don't see a lot of guys at heavyweight that he's going to go out there and consistently beat over and over again. I like him in this fight, just mainly due to the layoff that Danho's had, but again, not a lot of confidence to be had in this pick.
If Danho takes him out or takes him down, maybe he can do something.
Don't put money on this fight.
No, I've seen people saying, oh yeah, I've got him on a 2-leg parlay. Voodoo Wiz. Voodoo Wiz, you're here every week. Come on now. Come on now. We said don't do that. That's ridiculous. Matt, let's move into our next fight. And the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay, we have John Makdessi taking on Ignacio Bahamundus, the second fighter that I had to toss out the picture of with the Venom trunks that look just like the Reebok trunks. Ignacio Bahamundus making his UFC debut. And this is a guy that was so skinny at 170 pounds, making the move to 155. That's a recent picture. It is. He missed weight by, 3/4 of a pound, so there is that. He forfeits 20% of his purse to John Makdessi, who's coming into this fight like an older Greg Oden.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't have his knees all cut up that bad. Hopefully
they're cut up. I did see a picture. They're cut.
There's a heartbreaking video of some grandmother saying, Greg Oden, did you play basketball? And he was like, I did once, and then he just walks away. And that's heartbreaking to me. Anyways, this will be a really interesting fight. Now, I know we brought up the fact that Norma Dumont had missed weight. She missed weight really badly, and that was the 2nd time in a row, so of course she can't make that fight. Ignacio looked awful on the scales, and he only missed by a little bit because he really did try to make 155 pounds. I do believe he tried his best to make the weight class. He looked awful, though. He really didn't look good, and maybe that is just his first weight cut down to 155. He didn't have everything ready, or maybe he just shouldn't fight at 155 pounds. I don't think he should fight at 155 pounds. He really has the frame for a 170er, and I don't want to see us having another James Vick at 155 who's like, no, I can do it, guys, and then they just keep on getting stopped because they're so fragile due to the weight cut. I think Ignacio can win this fight, but it will be interesting. There's so many question marks around John Makdessi. We had touched on a lot of them in our prediction video. Just between surgeries, out due to the pandemic,
camp change,
and really just not being all that in the gym, or at least until recently. There's just a lot of question marks around this fight, similar to the last one with Castro and Danho, to be completely honest. I liked Ignacio before I saw him on scale. I am actually going to switch my pick and go John Makdessi, and I'm not in love with John Makdessi by any means. I don't think he's going to go out there and knock out Ignacio. I just think his cardio is going to be able to withstand that 15 minutes a little bit better, and I do see this fight going to the judges' scorecards. I don't see either guy getting a finish in this one, so I'm just going to slightly side with Makdessi and probably by decision.
I'm going with over 1.5. That was one of those ones out there, so that's the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay. It's a minus 300. It's nothing all that great, but when you combine it with the second one, we end up at minus 115, and then we're laughing. So yeah, I'm going over 1.5. John Makdessi's not a knockout artist. He's a great striker. He's a great kickboxer. So is Ignacio Bahamondes. He can get hit, and maybe you don't like it, especially with the weight cut, and it's kind of funny. You know, we talked about it going into it. Hey, this guy's had fights at 55. Kind of silly that we're here, and then he misses weight. Ryan making a good point, saying Makdessi's from the same part of Canada as you guys. He was born in Halifax, then raised in Montreal. So, yeah, it is fairly close to us, actually. But, yeah, I'm going with the over 1.5.
So what's your pick on the fight, though?
Over 1.5?
No. That doesn't count, Craig. You have to give a pick.
I'll go Bahamondes. Okay. I'll keep it with Bahamondes. But, yeah, the overall pick in the question mark kicks parlay, over 1.5. And, again, if you look at it on Instagram for this one, you got 76% of fans going with Bahamondes to 24% that have the man himself, the Canadian John Makdessi, and Bahamondes still about a minus 185, a minus 200 favorite. Yeah. Isaac, no, you're wrong. Oh, sorry. No, you're totally right. Makdessi's defense is great on the feet. It's really, really good. And Voodoo Wiz saying over 1.5 is a good bet. Yeah, I think it is. Second leg of the Fight Night Picks question mark kicks parlay. Hopefully I didn't yell too loud into the microphone, but Scott Holtzman taking on Mateusz Gamrot. I've got Gamrot. That's the second leg. I got him at a minus 250, so now you're minus 115. So over 1.5, Makdessi Bahamondes, and then I've got John Makdessi. I've got Mateusz Gamrot, and these question mark kicks parlays have been hitting lately, so I like it. Last weekend we had a great week. We're already 2-0 from last night's Bellator 256. You should have checked out this week in MMA, because if you didn't, we had Carmouche and we had Ryan Darth Bader. But in a fight like this, Matt, we get the hockey player Scott Holtzman taking on the gamer Mateusz Gamrot. Love the fight. This is an awesome one. What are you thinking?
I don't know why so many people think Scott Holtzman's going to win this fight. This fight really does remind me, at least public sentiment-wise, of when Drew Dober fought Islam Makhachev, and it felt like we were the only ones saying, like, no, this is going to be an absolute railroading, and everyone was like, oh no, he's got some power. Scott Holtzman has okay punching power. I wouldn't say he's a knockout artist. I would say he has slightly above average punching power. I think he has decent boxing, but the problem is, and I know I said this in the prediction video, and I'm going to feed this fat horse until it's obese. He has good boxing, but when you say someone has good boxing, it means that they have to be good defensively. This is my problem with Calvin Kattar, where people are like, oh, he's a good boxer. Is he? Because he gets hit way too much to be a good boxer. And for Scott Holtzman, he's a good boxer, but we saw him out there with... I think Beneil Dariush is a very good striker. I think he's a great MMA fighter, though. He's just good at everything. Yes, his striking has taken a major leap, and it did, especially in that Holtzman fight, but he beat the absolute brakes off Scott Holtzman, and Holtzman took a ton of damage in that fight. I know a lot of people like to remember the spinning back fist that ended it, but you have to remember the 30-punch combo that Beneil landed before he ended up landing that spinning back fist. And then we have Mateusz Gamrot, who's phenomenal at grappling, and we saw especially just the end of that Guram fight, where he's going ankle picks, and he's doing all of his scrambles. He's really incorporating the single legs with the clinch takedowns, with the double legs. It's going to be a lot for Scott Holtzman to deal with. So I see people picking Scott Holtzman, and personally, I just don't really understand where it's coming from.
Todd, Scott wakes up on the fourth line of the Solar Bears. Todd, I wanted to see the Orlando Solar Bears back February last year, but they didn't have any games, and I was in Orlando, and I just love East Coast hockey. Maine Mariners, where it's at. But yeah, I'm looking at a fight like this, Matt. Scott Holtzman, it's been said before, the guy's got a puncher's chance. 100% he does. He really does.
But it's not even that big a one, I wouldn't say.
Gamrot has a speed advantage. he has a huge wrestling advantage, and he has a grappling advantage. So for me, I really do like Mateusz Gamrot in this one. If we have a look at the votes at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 85% with Mateusz Gamrot to the 15% that have Scott Holtzman. And like I said, Gamrot's a minus 250 favorite. I'm going with the man himself, Mateusz Gamrot. We're going with the former KSW double champ in Mateusz Gamrot. Matt, let's move into our next fight. We have A10, Jim Miller, taking on Fight Night Picks interviewee, Joe Solecki. Make sure you check that out here on the channel. And there's almost 500 people tuning in on this Saturday morning. These are eggs and bacon type of fights, not popping popcorn. But toss us a like. Toss a sub if you haven't. We really appreciate you. Not looking at this one. I mean, Jim Miller's been there and done that. We talk about all the records that he set in his overall body of work. So let's talk about them. He's going to set a record for most wins in the most fights in the UFC with 37 tonight. He's third for wins at 21. He's third for submission wins at 10. Charlie Olive's way at the top. You've got 6 in bonuses with 12. Jim Miller's been there, and he's fought some of the best fighters in the world. Dustin Poirier, Benson Henderson, Nate Diaz, Donald Cerrone, Beneil Dariush, and the list goes on. Joe Solecki has not. But while Joe Solecki has not, he fights a lot like a young Jim Miller. It's just his striking might not quite be there, but his grappling and his positioning is very, very good. I love watching a Joe Solecki fight. For me, I have Solecki and Mike Trizano in that same category. Like, man, can't wait till those guys fight until Mike Trizano just got a really tough booking against them. But I love a Joe Solecki fight, and who's going to miss a Jim Miller fight? This is your featured prelim to get you set for ABC. What are you thinking here?
This will be another really interesting one, and this is a crossroads fight. If Jim Miller loses this, I really don't know what the UFC does with him. I'm not sure how many fights he has left on his contract. I'm assuming he's one of those fighters they would at least let fight out his contract and sort of let go gracefully, but you don't really know for Jim Miller. It does feel like every fight could be the last one from here on out, so just enjoy them while they're around. Jim Miller, pioneer of the sport, one of my favorite fighters of all time, big Jim Miller guy, but with all that being said, Joe Solecki is the counter for what a lot of Jim Miller can bring to the table, and unless Jim Miller can turn this fight into strictly a kickboxing fight and use his calf kicks really well early on, I just don't see there being much of a path to victory for him. Could he go out there and out-grapple Solecki for the first round? He could, but after that first round, that's really the only success I can see Miller have. His cardio has started to get bad as his age has progressed, and he's one of those fighters who I kind of thought Jim Miller would be like a Frankie Edgar, where he'd age a little bit more gracefully than he has. I thought his cardio would be able to at least be on an above average level throughout this last part of his UFC career, but we have seen his cardio start to fade as of late, so I'm going to stick with Joe Solecki, but this is a weird fight, and it is a fight that I could see Jim Miller winning. I'm not going to say Jim Miller's going to win, I'm not going to say puncher's chance or anything, but Jim Miller, we've seen it before. When he fights prospects, he's been there and done that against the best guys in the world, whether he has won or lost. So he could add some little veteran wrinkle out that we've never seen before, but I do like Joe Solecki in this fight.
F. Carrillo, the Botox brothers from Canada. Yeah, we're actually 50. We're just like really high and tight. That's the way it works. You're hanging out from H-Town in Texas. Nice. Matt, yeah, I look at this fight. I mean, I've got Joe Solecki. I'm not changing my mind on this. Solecki's a bit too much of a favorite to me. He's about a minus 250 or thereabouts. For the guy himself, Jim Miller, great veteran. You know and love him. He opened minus 115. He's now minus 203. Joe Solecki, one of the bigger movers and shakers on the card. And if we look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 75% of the fans have Solecki. Not much of a surprise there. Todd saying we play strictly 80s Joel. Listen. 70s Joel's good too, but Step Brothers really hit that one on the head. Mike Perry, D-Rod, Matt. This one's kicking off our main card. Mike Perry looked good. He's training at MMA Masters. He's taking on Daniel Rodriguez, who was ripping the bong on Monday night when we were getting ready for the show, wearing his J Balvin Jordan 1s, which is pretty cool.
So he's laid back, is what you're saying.
With his mind on his money and his money on his mind. Yeah, Daniel Rodriguez, really good striker. Kind of likes to keep his head like this when he decides to strike from his hips, which is weird. Mike Perry, I think he's probably going to incorporate some of his wrestling into this one, which would be weird. And you talked about it at the start of the week. Probably a pretty good game plan. Daniel Rodriguez has a lot of good defensive submissions, and he's a little slippery on the ground. I love the fight. For Daniel Rodriguez, he's been training with another great Rodriguez being Yair. And for Mike Perry, the Covingtons of the world, the Rafael Alves, make weight, buddy. Miguel Baeza as well over at MMA Masters. A really good gym that's starting to build up. I love this fight. We have it as one fight of the night. What are you thinking?
This fight's really fun. And okay, I'm going to talk about a few things Mike Perry does that I feel like don't get talked about enough. And you brought one of them up. The wrestling. When Mike Perry wins fights, especially, I would even say in that Alex Oliveira fight, because a lot of people in my DMs were like, hey, you didn't talk about the Oliveira fight enough. He took Oliveira down, and Oliveira is pretty good on the ground. Mike Perry needs to incorporate his wrestling, and I think a lot of people still look at Mike Perry as, oh, he's that brawler, he's that power puncher. He is, but he has refined his technique a little bit. Now he does switch stances. I don't think it's the best idea ever, because out of southpaw he gets hit quite a bit more than he does when he's an orthodox, but still something to look out for. And the fact that when Rodriguez does, he loves keeping that shin high in the air and throwing from his hip. Craig really couldn't have done the movement any better. It's going to be a liability for him when he does fight. Let's just bring up another fight that was recent. Woodley fought Vicente Luque. Woodley hurts Luque, then he gets wild. He had a guy hurt, and then he gets wild, and he gets cracked. Danny Rodriguez doesn't even have to have anyone cracked. It's just his natural tendency to keep his head up in the air and throw bombs. When he does fight those guys, like the Jeff Neals of the world, I'll even throw Michael Chiesa because he could time a takedown off that, the Vicente Luques of the world, you're going to have to figure that out and keep your hands up because those guys will be able to counter you when you do throw. I don't know if Mike Perry's that guy. He's good at moving forward, but he's not the best counter striker ever. Sometimes he will try to wait and counter your shots, but he does get hit himself when he does that. So I still like Danny Rodriguez. I know you had mentioned Rodriguez will slip around the mat and Perry can wrestle. If we get that version of this fight, I'm going to be bummed out. I want these guys to go in there and just try to take each other's heads off because that's really what this fight has been billed as. So I really do think Danny Rodriguez is going to get the win, but I think this will be an absolute slobber knocker.
This is why we need a week between picks, right? Because you go in and Mike Perry's been sloppy, he's missed weight. I don't know what he's going to look like coming into this one. And then I changed the graphics. Mike Perry weighed 70 pounds. No, I'm just kidding. It's hidden in behind his arm. He weighed 170. He looked good on the scale. He's saying the things you want him to say, and he's been training with Covington, and that's been confirmed. I like Mike Perry in this fight, and it hurts me to say it because I've been on this D-Rod train since he came into the UFC, but I do like Mike Perry after all of this week. So that's the first change of a pick. I'm going with Perry. I just want to talk about the odds really quick because Perry coming into this one, the underdog, open a -110 at Pick'em, got up to a +150, and the odds have come down since, and he's a +113. I wouldn't be surprised if these were pick'em odds when we come into it. Now, Daniel Rodriguez went down to a -175. Now he's up to a -136. So maybe we don't get quite there, but all of the money coming in on Perry right now, it seems like a lot of people are going that way in the comments section. It is a close fight. Listen, if I'm changing my mind, I had a hard time with it all week. But again, I like what I've heard from Mike Perry, which I don't think I've ever said before in my life. So I will go with Perry. And again, you're going with D-Rod.
Mike Perry's last one was against Mickey Gall, and he didn't even look that good in it. That's the one thing. Like, I can't really pick Mike Perry until let's say he goes out there, looks really good against Rodriguez, then yes, I can pick Mike Perry in the future. But the fact that his last win's over Mickey Gall, it's really hard to be confident in his pick.
Coach Lattori's first win in the octagon. She's doing better than Dean Thomas at this current juncture. Matt, we have a fight where people might look at this graphic and go, what? Well, who? What? You guys are... No, that's not right. Nina Nunes taking on Mackenzie Dern. And yes, she's being billed as Nina Nunes. It says it on her trunks. It also says it on her Instagram. It is no longer Nina Ansaroff for the purposes of this fight card. We're talking Nina Nunes taking on Mackenzie Dern. And we haven't seen Nina in a very, very long time. She's been out. Her last fight was a loss to Tatiana Suarez. She's 35 years old. She just had a kid. Mackenzie Dern, also a mother. The original MMA mother got a big win last night, Kasanganay. Wowee. But I look at a fight like this, Matt. This is a really interesting one because for Nina, very well-rounded, very good striker. Defensively, she's great, and that's what got her kind of from a subpar fighter to a nice little win streak to losing to Tatiana Suarez. And she looked good in the third round of that fight.
She did.
So there is that. Mackenzie Dern, meanwhile, just a strict grappler for the longest time. The worst takedown defense, I think, in the UFC, it's 0%. The worst takedowns 5%. But her striking's gotten incrementally better. We saw that against Vina Jandiroba her last time out. I love the fight. What are you thinking?
This has underdog written and upset written all over it. It really does. And for a lot of the reasons that you brought up, Nina Ansaroff is 35, coming off a major layoff and where her body changed significantly during it. Now she's in a fight that she hasn't done since her big layoff. You're starting to see where this is going. Even look at Mackenzie Dern's career. She has a few okay wins before she takes some time off, becomes a mom, and then her first fight back, she does kind of rush it and fight Amanda Hebos. Now, Dern looked terrible in that fight, and I do think Hebos is a really good fighter, so I'm not taking anything away from Amanda, but I do think that fight had a lot to do with the fact that Mackenzie Dern, she needed to get that one under her belt before she could then go on a run, and she's looked really good ever since. And the thing I like about Mackenzie Dern is in this world of social media and whatnot, Mackenzie Dern just loves to train. She's constantly in Ruka, she's constantly doing jiu-jitsu, and that's what I really like. When you have fighters who, I'm sure Mackenzie Dern could do a lot of things outside the sport. She speaks very well. She's bilingual. She has a lot of things going for her. But the fact that she still is very dedicated to the training every single day and she wants to get better, I think her striking's gotten her to the point where at least she could strike into the clinch a lot more effectively than she could in her early UFC days. And I do think she's going to be able to get this win over Mma Analyst. For Analyst, I just don't think she needs to fight anymore. And I'm not questioning her mentality coming into this fight. It's just different. When you're a fighter on your way up the ranks, you're constantly fighting for everything that you have. You took that time off in Mackenzie Dern's case, and now you're back and you look better than ever. And Mackenzie Dern really does have a chance to become the champ of this division. I'm not saying her and Wei Li should be matched up by the end of this year, but if Mackenzie Dern keeps on improving on this track that we've seen her improve on, I'm not afraid to say that, yeah, early 2023 maybe, we might have a future contender. But right now, I think Dern's striking will be enough that she's going to be able to get on the inside of Mma Nunes, I guess. That's very hard to remind myself to say. But with Nunes, her kicks are a really big part of her offense, and she needs her kicks to really let her hands go. But with Dern, the amount of pressure that she's going to bring to this fight, unless Nunes can catch her with a kick on the way in with a front kick to the body or to the head, I don't really like it for Nina in this fight, because for Ansarov, she needs to let her kicks go a lot to really let her boxing be incorporated into her stand-up game. I don't think she's going to get that chance in this fight. I think this fight's primarily going to be contested in the pocket. It's going to be a boxing match until it goes to the mat, and then, of course, on the ground, I like Dern a lot. So I'm actually going to heavily pick Mackenzie Dern, even though she is the underdog in this.
The weird thing is, and this is one of those weird ones, and we always talk about it, and people go, oh, Topology picks, they don't matter. Okay, well, let's go with the Fight Night Picks Instagram picks. 76% of fans have Mackenzie Dern to get the win to 24% that have Mma Nunes. But Nunes continues to climb as far as being a favorite. Now, she opened a minus 150. Somebody put a big chunk of change on her last week, or on Dern. And then the line crept back down. So Nunes right now, minus 138. I don't know if it's the name change. People think it's Amanda. For Mackenzie Dern, she's a plus 114 underdog. There's a lot of Mma Nunes support over in the comment section, and trust me, this is really hard to keep just saying Mma Nunes and not Mma Ansarov. It's very, very difficult. Clay pointing out, Dern has an awkward body shape. Her striking will never be great. She really needs to learn how to wrestle well enough. If the fight even gets close to the match, she's going to sink up a leg or something, get her down, and then it just continues to go on. Mac L. I'm trying not to dead name, man. It's just really difficult, but I keep saying Mma Nunes, so there is that. I just have to say it is difficult. But Mma Nunes, again, really, really good striker. Mackenzie Dern, really good on the mat. This is one, throw it off on my card. I'll keep it with Mma Nunes, but I have no confidence in that pick at all.
No, yeah, I like Dern. It should be a really fun fight, though. I'm looking forward to that because we're going to get a good idea of what Mma Nunes is going to look like. Because when she left before her layoff, she was one of those top 6 fighters in the division. And she did seem like she was always 1, maybe 2 fights away from a title shot, at least when she was on her run, I should say. So it will be really interesting to see what version of Nunes we get in this fight and what the ceiling of Dern possibly could be.
All right, Matt, we'll see what happens. Our next fight, we have Smilin' Sam Alvey taking on Miley Cyrus's boo from Twitter. It's Julian Marquez. Listen, Julian Marquez for me, this is another one. Just like Nunes and Dern, zero confidence in this one. Sam Alvey, did he look good at 185? 100%, sure.
Did he?
Matt the Mick hitting us up in the super chat. Appreciate you as always. But listen, Julian Marquez, questionable cardio. What else? Hadn't fought in multiple years. Fought Maki Pitolo. Maybe not the best UFC fighter. Probably not the best
Dangerous
UFC
guy,
fighter. Got a win. Didn't look good the first half of the fight, and then Pitolo got tired. For Sam Alvey, always brings it on the feet. Really awkward. Sometimes he knocks out Marcin Prachnio, who zombies forward with his head down. And sometimes he loses to Little Nog and gets knocked out. So it is really interesting that way. In Flames, Webrock saying, please English subtitles. But we're speaking English. I don't know. Matt, You look at this one, it's something.
Sam Alvey's just not a good UFC fighter at this stage in his career, and I'm really questioning his move down to 185. It's just a weird thing to do at this stage of his career. I don't see there being more money fights, if you will, at 185 than there would be at 205 pounds. I don't think we were seeing this very diminished version of him at 205. I don't think the reason he was losing those fights is because he was the smaller fighter by any means. So I'm going to pick Julian Marquez. I think he's got a slightly better submission game. Both guys do fight kind of in a similar manner. Both guys have good guillotines, good striking, good defensive submissions.
Look super labored the whole fight.
Look very labored the entire fight. Cardio is definitely not a pro for either one of these guys. I'm going to stick with the Julian Marquez pick. It will be interesting because I do think Sam Alvey is an underrated grappler. I do think he's all right in the grappling department. He does have some submission wins, so it should be an entertaining fight. I do see this being one of those kind of both guys get tired. Very much a heavyweight, middleweight fight, I should say. So I'm going to pick Marquez, but again, I'm not really tied to it.
Matt, 76% of fans at Fight Night Picks going with Julian Marquez, the 24% that have Sam Alvey. Let's have a look at the odds. I would keep this one off my card. Julian Marquez open to minus 125, is now minus 176. That's way too much of a favorite. Laos Non bringing up the fact Marquez is unpredictable and Alvey back to his original weight class. I mean, he did beat Rashad Evans at 185, so there is that. Matt, it's a great fight, but you know what it's time for? It's really time because the flowers are blooming, the grass is growing, and it's time to chop the weeds. Thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. Wow, you can trim your holes safely and efficiently. I'm talking about ball trimmers. Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming, have an exclusive offer for our audience. Use code FNP. You get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the other 2 million men who trust Manscaped. They're here to make sure you are trimmed and smelling nice. After all, it's time for some spring cleaning. Matt, listen, people love it. People love to talk about the Manscaped, so let's. They've got great products over there. I mean, listen, I'm an avid user of the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant. It's like a salve. You know the drill. Slap that stuff on there. It works great. I also have the Crop Reviver Ball Toner. Spritz a little bit of that on. You're going to have a great time. Cody, you're feeling it, and I know you are. We also have, listen, the Lawnmower 3.0. It's great stuff. Now, spring is sprung, and Manscaped has the best tools to get you ready. You know that I'm a shower shaver. I talk about it way too much.
I was going to say.
I talk about shower shaving more than I do, I don't know, taxes, investments, portfolios, and
all
so on.
Things in your life.
But really, it does work wonders. And Jim, you're feeling it. So Manscaped, they're the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming and forever change the grooming game with their amazing products. And they're here to help you with your above the waist holes too. You know why? Because they also have the Weed Whacker, and every single week
it grows so fast. That's what surprises me every time we do these ad reads is the length that Craig's nose hair grows every week.
The Weed Whacker uses a 9,000 RPM motor powered by 360 rotary dual blade system. They're making whacking your weeds a time to look forward to, delivering maximum confidence while providing hygiene. So it is really good stuff. I do have a nose hair problem. It's not because I shave it too much. It was a problem before I shaved it. It's still a problem now. The Crop Preserver, I talked about it. You're going to have some great stuff. And they also have the new Refined Cologne. Matt, it's in my bag somewhere. Boom goes the dynamite. Spritz that stuff in the air. You're really going to impress somebody. And yeah, good stuff. It's light, approachable, and gentlemanly in all the right ways. You'll be the talk of the next quarantine hang. You shouldn't breathe it in, though. Don't breathe it in. Smell good, feel good this spring. Get 20% off and free shipping. Use code FNP at manscaped.com. Matt, I probably won't spray that in your face
smart.
again. Yikes.
Goodness. Okay.
All right, check it out.
It smells great, though.
It does smell really good.
Oh,
all right, we're getting into our next fight. Our co-main event, we have Arnold Allen taking on Sodiq Yusuff. In this fight, a lot of people are considering a possible fight of the night. I mean, for Arnold Allen, so well-rounded. For Sodiq Yusuff, always marching forward unless he's not and he's getting hit. You worry about that a little bit. Good offensive wrestling. Let's see what his defensive wrestling looks like. Maybe we find that out in this fight. But for the man himself, Arnold Allen, a lot of good kicks. We saw that accentuated in the Gilbert Melendez fight, among others. With Sodiq Yusuff, had a really good win his last time out. A quality win against Andre Fili. And for both of these guys, they were matched up against really high-ranked fighters. Those fights fell out. Now they get each other. But for Allen, it was what? Josh Emmett and...
I know the Emmett one. That was the fight I was really excited for.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Josh Emmett. For Sodiq Yusuff, it was... no. For Sodiq Yusuff, it was supposed to be against Edson Barboza. There was another one for Arnold Allen that's just not coming off the top of my head. But it is what it is. I love this fight.
This should be a really interesting fight. And for Arnold Allen, here's my problem. And I'm going to bring it back to the Gavin Tucker-Dane Ige fight because the odds are very close and they remind me of this fight. So you had Tucker, I had Ige, and we're both very split on this. But my issue was, when you talked about all the times Gavin Tucker looked good, you brought up the opponents. Well, he looked good against Sam Cecilia. He looked good against Billy Q. That's great. But the fact that Arnold Allen's looked good against the Gilbert Melendez's of the world, Nick Lentz was his last win. It's been a while since we've really seen Arnold Allen tested, and it has been. He hasn't fought those other up-and-coming prospects to the same degree that Sadiq Yusuf hasn't. I don't think Yusuf's gone out there and fought any other prospects that are on his level, per se, but I do think wins over Andre Fili are really important at featherweight. I think wins over Gabriel Benitez are important, too, because those are very dangerous fighters.
Jeremy Stevens.
And oh yeah, and that would have been a phenomenal fight. But for Yusuf, the fact that he has fought rangy strikers at this division and still found a way to get on the inside of their kicks and their range are really important. I like what I see from Yusuf when he does fight those opponents. The fact that he is defensively sound. Now, yes, he can get caught on his way in. He does have that sort of brooding forward marching style. And if you can catch him ducking, you can be able to catch him with an uppercut or a knee. Gabriel Benitez is just able to keep him at a really long range, hit him with a straight right. But the fact that Yusuf was able to recover really fast after he was dropped by Benitez and then come back and stop him, I think is more impressive. And I do like it when fighters go through adversity. I think sometimes it is good to get dropped in fights and then come back and win. And the fact that I saw him get dropped by Benitez, who, again, I know I'm the biggest Gabriel Benitez fan in the world. I don't even think it's in contest at this point. I think that was really important, especially the fact he came back to knock him out. For Allen, I don't think he has the finishing ability to get Sadiq Yusuf out of there, and that's the thing I keep on coming back to. If there's a finish in this fight, I can almost guarantee you it's Sadiq Yusuf's going to be finishing Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen can outlast...
Stanza Bets totally sees it a different way than you. Arnold Allen, Yusuf is too chinny.
That's 100% fine, but Arnold Allen doesn't have much power in his shots. My problem with Arnold Allen is, it's not really a problem. I kind of like what he does. He reminds me of Michael Bisping in the way that he strikes. He's not like a Vanderlei Silva, where it's you're in front of me, I'm going to try to hit you and not worry about my defense. Arnold Allen doesn't put everything behind his shots because he has really good cardio and really good output. He can mix the two together to make it a really hard fight for Yusuf, but my issue is, for him to make it a hard fight for Yusuf, he's going to have to stand in the pocket, and I don't think he's going to be able to eat the body shots or the hooks of Yusuf, and I do think eventually Yusuf's power will win out.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a fight like this, and it really reminds me of Casey Kenny's second to last fight, where he took on, well, the prospect, when he fought Nathaniel
Great
Wood,
fight.
and it was one of those fights where both guys do a lot of things similarly. It's going to cancel each other out, and at the end, you're going to get a really weird decision. Now, these guys don't fight so stylistically the same as Wood and Kenny did, but it is a comparison that I would like to bring up. A mixed martial saying who has better cardio might come down to it. Arnold Allen has really good cardio. It'll be interesting to see how this one works out. But again, I look at the odds. It's a pass for a lot of people on their cards. Pass for me too. For Sadiq Yusuf, minus 143 over on best fight odds. For Arnold Allen, plus 118. You have the win streak of the man himself. Arnold Allen coming into it. For Sadiq Yusuf, only the one loss. Over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 59% Yusuf, 41% Allen. I still have Yusuf in this fight.
I do too, and Allen has good cardio, but he's not Kamaru Usman. Like, let's not get it out of proportion, say he's going to go in there and make Sadiq Yusuf tired in the first round, outlast him round 2 and 3. He has better cardio, but I really only favor his cardio kind of the last half of the third round. I don't think he's going to come into play in that first round like we talked about a lot with middleweights, light heavyweights, heavyweights. So I do think this fight's a lot closer on paper than maybe even we're making it seem, but yeah, I do like Sadiq Yusuf.
Going into our main event, Matt, 600 people tuning in, only 118 likes. You gotta toss out the like. It takes 2 seconds, Matt. Let's get into our main event of the evening. Marvin Vettori taking on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland weighed half a pound more than he did 2 or 3 weeks ago when he fought Derek Brunson. Marvin Vettori came into this one mean mugging because, according to Matt, Kevin Holland ate his ciabatta. So there is that. Now that sounds like a terrible, terrible thing to say, but I look at this one and did Kevin Holland learn anything in 3 weeks? Because Marvin Vettori was getting ready for Darren Till's striker. Kevin Holland, yeah, is he slippery on the mat? He's a black belt under Travis Lutter. He didn't listen to Travis Lutter's last fight. And he got totally dominated by Derek Brunson, unless you count a couple of the good striking combinations he had on the feet. But there were a few comments I saw out there this week where people said, Holland off his back. He was doing stuff against Derek Brunson.
Like
did we watch different fights? He got obliterated. Every single thing he did in 2020 to be our fighter of the year and most people's fighter of the year just went away. And now this isn't Kevin Holland Trailblazer. This is Kevin that weighs 183 pounds and a half at middleweight.
Kevin Holland right now is kind of doing what Giannis did after his first MVP. It was like, damn, you're really good. And then it's like, okay, but you need to show me something different at a certain point. Kevin Holland, it's just more of the same over and over and over again. Maybe the Giannis comparison isn't great because Giannis really is one of the best in the world. I don't know if Kevin Holland is. It's an interesting fight. I'm sure Kevin Holland has learned something in the last 3 weeks, whether it be about maybe insects, could be about the weather, could be about who knows, but I'm sure Kevin Holland's learned something. My issue with Kevin Holland, now I will bring this up before I forget. He has mentioned a lot, at least in media this week, that okay, I'm not going to be talking in between rounds. I'm going to listen to my coaches. I'm going to be locked in. It's tough to teach an old dog new tricks, and that it's one thing to say that, but I do think you're going to fall back in old habits once he does get into the cage. When he gets into the cage, at least during the fight, I do think when him and Vettori are fighting each other, he will be yelling at him, talking to him. It's not going to be a good look because Vettori can do everything Derek Brunson can, and then maybe just shy of a little bit of punching power that Brunson might have the edge over Vettori in. I think Vettori's better than Brunson at pretty much everything, and I think Brunson, at least at this stage in his career, looks as good as he ever has done. Just for remember Vettori, I think when he fought Israel Adesanya, he got the rub. He realized how close he was to being as good as one of those people who, you know, we're talking about as an all-time great perhaps. And I know people are down on Adesanya after the Jan Blachowicz fight, but you have to remember Vettori really set that blueprint in place for Jan Blachowicz to kind of pick it up and run with it from there. So I do think Vettori's going to be able to get this win. I'll be interested to see what they do with Vettori after this, though, because there's a lot of great fighters at 185 right now, a lot of good fighters near the top of the weight class. So personally, I do think Vettori's going to be able to outlast whatever Kevin Holland throws them. Kevin Holland has good punching power when he's at really far range. He reminds me of Amanda Nunes, where he has to catch you at the end of his shots, but when he does, there is decent power behind it. With Vettori, just his natural game plan is to walk forward, eat those big shots, have my hands up. I think the durability and the strength of Vettori are going to play out here. I see him winning a really convincing 5-round decision.
Listen, I get it. I mean, you've got Kevin Holland, super active, fought, 5 times last year? This is his second fight in a few weeks. Like, it's absolutely insane.
Wild.
But I don't think, listen, had him to beat Derek Brunson, but he didn't show me anything. Striking, again, it won out for brief periods, like 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there, and then he gets taken down and dominated. Kevin Holland has had porous takedown defense his entire UFC run, and he's been taken down by much lesser competition. It's just he had the tools to win. Even in the Jacare fight, he gets taken down. Jacare, you talk about vampires with Marvin Vettori. Jacare is so damn old. We saw what happened to Lyoto Machida last night in the main event against Ryan Bader. When you reach 42, 43, you get tired quick, and for Lyoto, the wrestling proved out. Now, what does that have to say in this fight? Kevin Holland's beaten good fighters. He was deserving of being a fighter of the year last year because it was so impressive. However, you lose to Derek Brunson the way you did, perennial gatekeeper, and then you get matched up with a harder fight in Marvin Vettori, a guy that's had a full camp for Darren Till, that does a lot of the long, rangy things where he can, like Kevin Holland. I like Vettori in the fight. I'm not going to change my pick in this one. For Kevin Holland, can he knock out Marvin Vettori? Sure he can. I don't think he will. I really like what I saw out of Vettori striking against Jack Hermanson, so there is that. Cody Keller hitting up the super chat just to say, do I like the early start time? I'll be honest with you. Not a morning person. Listen, I love Red Bull. If they would sponsor us, man, if you know somebody, like if you've got a hookup, we're big energy drink guys. And it's not good for your veins or your bloodstream, but listen, I like energy drinks. To answer the question, kinda. I mean, then I get to do something on my Saturday night.
Every now and then they switch it up, but right now it's not like you're doing that much on Saturdays anyway. It's not like there's really much to do during a pandemic, so it's okay to switch it up, but I much prefer the late night fight cards.
Yeah, I'm still going with Marvin Vettori, not switching it. So, appreciate everybody for tuning in, but the show's not done yet, because we're going to go back up and down through the card. If you missed anything, I've seen people asking over in the comments section about, Jack Shore. There are a few people asking for parlays. I'll give you the question mark kicks parlay again, and we'll get through it, because the fights start in about an hour. So, Matt, we'll flip it back to the start. We have Impa Kasanganay taking on Sasha Palatnikov. And I could not have a harder time with this one because, again, Palatnikov's durable. You had the weird weight cut from Kasanganay. He's never fought at 70. He looked physically good, but how's his cardio going to look? I don't know. So we'll see what happens. But, I'm still sticking with Kasanganay on the pick. But if Palatnikov won, wouldn't be surprised in the least.
No, I like Impa on this one. It will be interesting to see him down to 170 for the first time.
All right, Matt, we'll move into our next one. We have Darwin Jung taking on William Knight. Going with the underdog, William Knight in this one, representing Thornton Martial Arts, a gym you never hear of.
Yeah, I think Darwin Jung's pressure is going to make him walk into a big shot from William Knight, and I like the wrestling from Knight, too.
All right, Matt. Next one, we have Luis Saldana taking on Jordan Griffin. I love the experience of Griffin. I love the camp at Rufus Sport. I love the submission abilities. And for Luis Saldana, every win's by finish, but he's been finished himself, too, by lesser competition. I like the win streak for Saldana. I like his last fight. but it was against, it wasn't really against the best of fighters. And the comment up there, Pinto sound bull piss equals taurine. No, it's actually something else from the bull that's not piss that's taurine. No, it's it's something else. It's bull
synthetic.
It's bull yak, but yeah, taurine synthetic these days. I still like Jordan Griffin.
I like Saldana. Griffin just hasn't shown me enough. We can talk about the fact that he has won a round against some decent fighters. He hasn't put 15 minutes of good work together in the UFC yet, and he's had 5 opportunities to do it. I don't think we're going to get that today, but I wouldn't be surprised. If Jordan Griffin wins this fight, it's a good fight. It's putting him back on the right track, if you will, and at least he stays in the UFC. For Saldana, a win over Griffin is a great way to start your UFC career, though. A guy who does have quite a bit of experience, so we're going to learn a lot about Saldana if he's able to win this one.
The right stuff. You got the right stuff, Matt. Next fight, Jordan Griffin taking on... No, I'm just kidding. We have Hunter Azure taking on Jack Shore. And for me, I still like Jack Shore.
I do too. I think he's going to be the much heavier fighter on top. And I know that's what we talked about a lot with Azure is he's a heavy top pressure wrestler. The difference is when you're a wrestler in top pressure, yeah, you're really heavy on top, but you can get swept. Whereas if you're a guy like Jack Shore, it's going to be really hard to sweep you on top. You're just going to be so savvy to whatever transitions he's going to go for that I like Shore quite a bit.
All right, Matt, next one. We have Yorgan Castro taking on Jarjis Danho. Let us know in the comments section who you're taking in this one because... who knows? You never know. Jarjis has been off for 4.5 years. Yorgan Castro's looked like a world beater, and he's looked like absolute awfulness in the cage. I still get Jorgen in this one.
I do too, but I have no idea what's going to happen in this fight. It should be interesting.
King James, you're a donkey in the comments section, Matt. Our next one, we have John Makdessi taking on Ignacio Bahamundes. Ignacio missed weight, didn't look great on the scale. John Makdessi got into a knife fight with the surgeon, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess his ACL's fixed. He hasn't been training a lot. He's older. He switched gyms. He's going to have Benson Henderson in his corner. That's cool. I still have VFS Academy's Ignacio Bahamondes.
I hate the weight cut for Bahamondes. I really do. He didn't look good at all yesterday. I'm going to slightly edge John Makdessi. A lot of people always going to get head kicked. Listen, that happened to Cowboy Cerrone, one of the best fighters of all time, when he was at his best. So I'm not putting that much stock into that fight. I really doubt Ignacio Bahamondes is entering the UFC at the skill level that Cowboy was at that time. So I'm going to pick Makdessi. I don't like a lot of the wrinkles, or at least I don't like a lot of what I've heard come out of his camp for the last year, but I really don't like that weight cut. So I'm going to slightly side with Makdessi. And with Benson Henderson in his corner, I know we're going to bring this up a lot, calf kicks. Calf kicks are going to be important. Benson was the first person to ever use them. I'm sure John Makdessi, with his kickboxing background, really just as a good kicker, is going to use them a lot in this fight, so I'm going to pick Makdessi.
He throws a really, really high percentage of kicks in his fights, especially to the legs, so it'll be interesting to see how that one works. But again, I still have Bahamondes. Our next fight, we have Scott Holtzman, Mateusz Gamrot. And actually, let's go back for 2 seconds. John Makdessi, Ignacio Bahamondes. Anthony brings up a good point. I thought Matt was terrified of ACLs. Apparently, the Cub Swanson thing just threw a wrench in that plan. I just don't like an ACL surgery for a guy that's that old coming back.
But here's the thing. You're saying ACL injury. The other guy almost died yesterday.
Total ACL reconstruction, hasn't been training, or has been training from mid-February to now.
The other guy took all the water out of his body and still couldn't make weight. He looked so bad. I think Makdessi's going to get this one done. I really do.
All right, but the reason why I came back here wasn't to argue with you. First half of the question mark kicks parlay, I've got over 1.5 in this one. John Makdessi doesn't really tend to knock people out. Ignacio Bahamondes can last, hopefully. So, yeah, we're going that way. Matt, next fight, the second leg of the Fight Night Picks question mark kicks parlay. I have Mateusz Gamrot on that. So, Gamrot to get the win over Holtzman.
I think we're both in the same party here. Mateusz Gamrot does a lot that we both really like. And it's nothing against Scott Holtzman. It's just... when I think Scott Holtzman, I think he's like 29, 30, 31, but he is quite a bit up there. It's not like we're dealing with a prospect anymore. And when you look at the wrestling and just the overall variety of strikes that Gamrot brings to the table, I like Mateusz quite a bit.
All right, Matt, we'll go into our next fight. We have Jim Miller, Joe Solecki. I like the younger version of the two men. And that sounds weird, but Joe Solecki does a lot of the things that Jim Miller's done for his entire career. Solecki's really positionally sound. I don't see him going out there like we saw, who was it? In Jim Miller's second to last fight before he fought Vince Pichel, Roosevelt Roberts, where Roberts kind of stumbled and then Miller just jumped on him. I don't see Solecki making a mistake like that. I really do like Solecki here.
I love Jim Miller, and this hurts me to say, but I do think Joe Solecki's going to be able to get this one done.
All right, Matt, we move into our next one. We have Mike Perry taking on Daniel Rodriguez. I switched the pick. I'm going Mike Perry in this one.
The fans are going to win, because I do think this fight's going to be absolutely crazy. I'm still going to pick D-Rod. I don't like the takedown entries for Mike Perry. I think those are an absolute guarantee of getting guillotined, so I do like D-Rod in this one.
All right, Matt, we're split on the pick there. We go into Nina Nunes. New name, same style. Taking on Mackenzie Dern. And again, I've flip-flopped on this one all week. I could say Dern today. I could say Nunes this afternoon. I have a hard time. I'd leave it off a card, but I'm going to go with Nunes here.
I like Dern in this fight. It will be interesting seeing what version of Nunes
That's
we get
exactly
back. Exactly.
Right?
She could show up in the first round, get taken out immediately, and not look great. Or she could defend every takedown and look like that Nina Nunes of past. So I'm very excited for this fight, but I'm going to pick Dern.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. We have Sam Alvey taking on Julian Marquez. I gotta be honest, this fight sucks.
It's awful.
It's bad. And it's ridiculous that it's on a main card, but I'm ultimately going with Julian Marquez.
I've got Julian Marquez. Just Sam Alvey has not looked good in a while now.
Sam Alvey could cardio king it and outstrike him, and Julian Marquez doesn't have the best cardio,
And
but
we all lose in that case.
Yikes. All right, Matt. Co-main event. Love the fight. Awesome one. Possible fight of the night. You have Arnold Allen taking on Sadiq Youssef. I love it. It's a close one, but I'm going with Sadiq Youssef.
I've got Super Sadiq as well. I think this is going to be an absolute barn burner of a fight, though. I really do.
All right, Matt. And then in our main event of the evening, we're going Italian Dream. And listen, for Marvin Vettori, is it just like, oh, well, I don't want to lump myself in there with Rocky Balboa, so I go Stallion, I went Dream?
True.
To me, it sounds like ice cream. The Italian Gelato, Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, I don't have any creative nicknames for him, but I like Vittori a lot. Again, you just look at what Brenson was able to do to Kevin Holland. Do you think Marvin Vettori can replicate that game plan? I certainly do, and I think he can beat him in different ways as well, so I like Vittori.
All right, Matt, the fights start in just under an hour. You can check those out wherever you check out your fights. We've got a lot of great content coming out this week. We're going to have the picks for next week. We're going to have This Week in MMA with Bellator content, One Championship. We get the interviews with JHK. And there are a few people out there that said, listen, guys, it was 2 weeks away from you before this UFC content. We've dropped 11 videos in that time. We were always here. So there's always great stuff with Fight Night Picks. I love the fights today. I'm looking forward to the card.
Oh, yeah, I think it's going to be a really good time. Hopefully we all get a good night's sleep because they're actually on during the day for once.
All right, Matt, really enjoying it. Make sure you toss us a like and a sub if you haven't already. Make sure you check out some of that content that's out there. We will catch you next week. And as we always say, Matt, with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt.